With Bushiroad's English presentation premiering tomorrow right here in Manila, I thought I'd put out a discussion video so that I can capitalize on the hype. Let's begin. With Japan recently getting a new restriction list that barely solved the 7 attack deck issues in standard, most players would expect that Bushiroad would announce an English restriction list tomorrow. Some would say that it's too early, since DZBT-03 just released barely 2 months ago, but seeing as how dominant Shiranui and Shoujo Doji were, pun intended, it wouldn't be healthy for the game to have 2 decks be the ones always topping, especially since the BCS season has recently started. If they are going to announce a new restriction list tomorrow, they would probably implement it at the end of October. This would be a good opportunity to actually do some real change for the meta, as I would say, if not for the fact that Bushiroad International usually just copy-paste the restriction list despite being told that we'll have different list. To that I put my non-existent hat into the table and give 2 additional changes to the restriction list to be more effective. For starters, besides Furai being restricted, another possible restriction in my opinion is choice restricting Virina Respiraridia and Sekie from being in the same deck. Hitting Furai wasn't enough, since players would have just replaced them with the 2 mentioned cards, which didn't solve the deck not having a consistent way of doing 7 attacks. In fact, playing more copies of Virina Respiraridia would have screwed over players using Angel Ladder as a hard counter, since it doesn't require dominate. The only way Shiranui can be fully balanced is taking away its ability to consistently do 7 attacks, or at least make it a point that they have to work for their standing rear guards. As for Shoujo Doji, his Aso being restricted was a good hit, but the only thing this did was reduce the deck's way of getting their key pieces or sentinel consistently. That isn't much when his ride line is probably the best deck filter in the game, being able to filter the deck by 4 cards. 5 to 6 more if he managed to soul charge a certain card, which brings me to my other recommended hit, that being Tsukuyo Dachi needs to go down to 1 copy as well. Just soul charging this card instantly sets up an extra attack, while also replacing itself in your soul to pay for Shoujo Doji's skill. That's a 3-for-1 deal for a resource manager. What's worse, each copy of Tsukuyo Dachi isn't once per turn, meaning you can keep using its skill as long as you have enough Counter Blast and Kinran to keep putting it into your soul. There's a problem with the deck's gameplay loop when your only method of counterplay is relying on a defensive trigger to reduce the pain. Finally, for new products, we already have a release schedule up until January of next year, with DZBT-06 obviously coming out on February. And like I said in my previous news video, I severely doubt that the English game would get the Koro comic collab, as it's a licensing issue nightmare waiting to happen. At most, we should get an English exclusive product like the Virgil Astarte deck. One thing I have in mind is Bushiroad International could make the Craycross Epic into trial decks that would come out along with DZBT-06 and give easier access to each deck's older cards like their Eidline or promo cards. This would be a good entry level for players, as Vanguard Dear Days 2 also comes out next year. It would be good marketing to at least have some new deck set products for each nation that isn't garbage, so that people can try out the physical card game. And that concludes today's rambling. Special thanks to my Patreon members for continuing to support my content creation. Be sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments how bad my restriction list idea was, and you posted your own.